We are reconvening to our regular meeting, and I do have a couple reports from closed session. The Board of Trustees took action in closed session to deny a government claim filed against the district. The board approved by unanimous vote the release of temporary certificated employees for employment effective the close of 2019-2020 school year based on Education Code Section 44954. By unanimous vote, the board approved the non-reelection of certificated employees from employment effective the close of 2019-2020 school year based on Education Code Section 44929.21. Okay, and now we are moving on to our flag salute. So we have two students here from George Hall. We have Kelly and Maliana, who will be leading us in the flag salute. You can go to the mic right there.
Use that microphone. Yeah, so we can hear you.
Please rise for the flag. Place your right hand over your heart. Please salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Kelly and Maliana, thank you for being here. So I was wondering if you could share with us what some of your hobbies are outside of school.
Some of my hobbies are playing instruments like piano, and I like to read.
Great.
Some of my hobbies are playing the clarinet and playing softball and other sports.
Great. And what about in school? What are your favorite activities in school?
I like creative writing, and I enjoy being in student council as vice president.
Great. And being a sister.
I enjoy writing like paragraphs, and I enjoy being the president.
Oh, great. Okay, and would you both mind sharing who you came here with tonight?
I came here with my parents, Kevin and Joanna, and I like, and my sisters, and Miss Stanek and Miss Rauk and Miss Kazemi.
Great.
I came here with my parents, my sister, Miss Kazemi, Miss Rauk, Miss Stanek, and Miss Mori.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. We're so happy to have you here. So we know that you have lots of homework, so you can hang out for as long as you want, but feel free to leave whenever you need to because it's a school night. So thank you so much. Okay, moving on to roll call. Let the record reflect that all trustees are in attendance. Approval of agenda, February 13th, 2020.
Motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, approval of minutes, February 4th, January 30th, and another January 30th.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to public statements related to non-agenda topics. The San Mateo Foster City School Board cannot act upon any matter that has not been included and publicly posted on the agenda, except under limited circumstances as permitted by law. The board may refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and/or action. Where appropriate, please limit your statements to 3 minutes. Do we have any public statements for non?
We do not tonight.
We do not? Okay. Great. Do we, for non-agenda?
Yeah, Jen asked me to sign her in for the CDAC update, but she's in traffic. So
Oh, okay. That is an agenda item, so we'll take that. So you can fill it out and, yeah, turn it in. That's fine. So moving on to public statements related to agenda items. Persons will be called on at the appropriate time. So foundation and committee reports. Any foundation committee reports?
Melissa, is that I think that's what the CDAC thing she's doing is. I'm not certain, but.
Well, there is a special ed,
No, that's
okay.
the audit, this is the.
You can just turn it in then and we'll take it.
Okay, yeah, Jen will be here soon.
Oh,
I think she had planned to give a short update on what the CDAC.
Okay, we may have to have her do that for the SPED because we have to keep our agenda moving, unfortunately. Okay. So any foundation committee reports? No.
So, I'll just give a couple updates.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So part of I guess it was the homework committee and then part of
Enrollment
and
committee.
enrollment and growth committee. Trustee Watkins and I, along with a contingent from the district staff, met with Senator Hill to talk about the effects of AB 48, which is the new Prop 13 on the March ballot. As you may or might remember, AB 48, again now Prop 13, does negatively affect us in terms of the loss of money that we will receive for housing developments that are within a half mile of major transit stops. So we met with Senator Hill and discussed with him possible options and shared our issues with him, just so that he understood that for the largest district in the county, or at least San Mateo County, maybe not in his Senate district, but there was a potentially at least a 6 to 10 million loss to our district over the next probably 10 years or so. This is basically the result of if Prop 13 passes in March, which is, Prop 13 is the, school safety bond measure, which is a $15 billion bond measure. There was a late add into the legislature that basically exempted developer fees, any residential developer fees within a half mile of major transit stops. So all of the development within the city of San Mateo pretty much is within a half mile of a major transit stop, so therefore we will not receive any developer fees if this passes. So we worked out, we shared our concerns, and we just want to let you know that.
And just to add on, I think we were sharing with Senator Hill that, generally we're in support of building new development. It's sorely needed, as we all know, in our community. We're really talking about troubleshooting some of the ways that we could sort of all work together to mitigate the potential impacts of losing some of the revenue. So that was really I guess the premise of the conversation. And he was very receptive to kind of listening to some of those concerns, and him and his staff will get back to us around kind of potential implications and ways to work around that.
Yes.
Great.
Sure, yes. The other comment I have is we had a Home for All meeting this morning, and I will share that in the housing educator housing discussion later.
Okay, any other reports? We did have a Foster City Liaison meeting. Let's see. We talked about several different things. I know we got an update from the city of Foster City regarding the levy and where they are with that, and they have made significant progress in terms of like I guess I'll just say like the paperwork that needs to be done before the actual project begins. My understanding is they got through it pretty quickly. They did talk about some kind of things they're exploring at a regional level, including some kind of like hovercraft ferry, which kind of blew my mind. I'm like, I didn't even know that existed. And then we talked about the new school in Foster City. as well as the fact that the city of Foster City has like a surplus in their budget, which is kind of like unheard of. And so, yeah, it was a good meeting overall, and we're gonna continue having those monthly meetings. And I'll just mention briefly that we did have LMI planning meetings and Equity Task Force leadership meetings as well in the past 2 weeks. And those meetings will be happening, I want to say, next week. Yes, both next week, and then I'll have a report out for the next board meeting.
Do you want to talk about the Equity Network by any chance?
Oh, yes. Here, you can do it.
Trustee Corzo and I and Superintendent Rosas have been part of the San Mateo County Equity Network. I wouldn't say a task force. What is it? It's the Equity Network. It's a network. It's a network of.
County network.
It's a county network of superintendents, trustees, and district staff, all dealing with equity. And we had a day-and-a-half long, I'd say, workshop where we've been having essentially half-day workshops over the last few months. We just recently had sort of a back-to-back, and I will say it was one of the most impactful things that I've ever been to this past week. And there were some things that talked about student achievement gap and closing the achievement gap, and then the bigger issues was about racism and how in some way we're all racist to some degree. We all have implicit bias, and we're either targets of racism or agents of racism. It's either one or the other, and how do we go about and combat it? And I will just say it was, for me at least, it was truly, I can't say this right because I'm really not talking right today, transformative. I did get that out. But it did make me think for days afterwards, and I still think about it. And I just hope that if they do this again, that you guys who weren't able to go yet this time would be able to go, because they brought in, was it Nicole Anderson? Is that?
She's our regular.
She's the regular
facilitator.
But then Stephanie Rivas, who's a retired
Toby.
teacher, and yeah.
Toby Hussein?
Yeah, they were just absolutely fantastic, and I tell you, I've been to a lot of different things, but they were just, it makes you very uncomfortable in a very positive way, and it really made me reflect on culture and everything in our diverse society as we are. So.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I will just add to that I'm really hopeful that this equity network is going to do a lot of good things for a lot of students throughout our county. One of the highlights is that to really combat inequities, you have to be really explicit about what students are facing the most inequities and really who they are. It can be controversial work and it can be uncomfortable work, but it's really necessary to do. And so I'm going to keep it at that for now. But it really was amazing. I agree. Okay. Any other foundation or committee reports? No? Okay. Moving on to announcements.
The Communication Committee did meet.
Oh.
So they reviewed the 3 goals that they work on: ensuring websites are up to date and marketing showcasing our schools, building communication capacity through training on the website and school messenger, and pursuing marketing opportunities. So they met and discussed those items.
Great. Superintendent report.
So we have a lot of activities and events in our district, and I always hesitate to mention some of the activities for for fear of forgetting other ones, but at this meeting, I would like to thank our Foster City and San Mateo Rotarians for their generous dictionary giveaway project. Over 1,000 beautiful hardbound children's dictionaries were given to third graders in our district, and the kids were really excited to receive them. And I'd also like to recognize Crystal Burden and all of the Bowditch staff, family volunteers, and students who put on the recent drama production Seussical. Some of us were able to attend, and they will be entertaining us at our next board meeting. It was a wonderful production. And I know that College Park walked in the San Francisco Chinese New Year Parade, and they had a wonderful time also. I, too, wanted to mention the Equity Network, that we had engaged in it, and we did enjoy a very productive day and a half. And we did examine how to better address the policies, practices, and our own biases as we meet the needs of our district's students. The facilitator is excellent. Her name is Nicole Anderson, and she is now working with our Equity Task Force and helping guide us in taking actionable steps to improve our district practices. Also, in between the last board meeting and this one, the trustees visited both Audubon and Foster City schools, and we do want to say how much we appreciate the time that the administrative and teaching staff give in sharing their school, their practices, and how they're moving their students forward. LMI has been busy, the leadership team, as you mentioned, compiling information regarding the use of Measure V funds for an upcoming meeting, and then a subsequent board presentation. Wellness, arts, and the sciences come up as top needs across the district, so a more detailed report will come. Now, along those lines, I do want to point out that the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee is being formed, and if you are interested in being a member of the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee, you can find information about this committee on our website, or you can also connect with Patrick Gaffney, who's the last person on this dais over here. He's our CBO if you have questions and would like to participate. I also want to point out that the LCAP is starting again. And the design is going to be slightly different from this past years. We've launched into a new series of engagements. Last night, the first of these engagements was held at Bayside, and I do want to thank the many staff members who were involved in setting it up and facilitating the discussions. Remember that the targeted improvement practices that we want to see in our Title I schools, Parkside, and special education program will be embedded in the LCAP, so we do welcome your engagement. So letting you know about the upcoming meetings, February 26th at Abbott, March 3rd, Bowditch, March 10th, North Central Community. Now, this one will be held in Spanish with English translation, and March 24th, Special Education Advisory Committee here at the district office at 7. And there are going to be staff engagements that have been posted internally. So other opportunities to participate in actions around this district, we are in the process of seeking a new name for the new school in Foster City. Look on our website for the way to enter your selection. So with that, I'll close. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Rosas. Okay, we're moving on to the proposed consent agenda. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Moving on to our special education audit report.
Good evening, President Corzo, rest of the trustees, and Dr. Rosas. Sarah Drinkwater, Assistant Superintendent, Student Services. And I'd like to introduce this evening the two professionals who worked with us on the special education audit, Dr. Sandy Clute here and Mr. Jack Lucas. They will share with you and go through the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, all. Board President, board members, Dr. Rosas, and those of you in the audience. Jack and I are delighted to be here. We started this study back in Oh. This is moving? No, it
Anna?
isn't. It's showing here, but it's not up there.
That's because you have notes. But do you want these to show up there?
If we can.
When you go like this.
Okay, so do I hit this to go up? Technological items are not my strongest suit here. This is the page I want, but then to go to the next one, I hit this? Down. Okay, that's what I was doing wrong. Sorry about that. Jack and I had been contacted by the superintendent in June of 2019 and asked if we would come in and take a look at the special education programs. Both the superintendent and assistant superintendent of student services knew that there were some issues in special education, both programmatically and fiscally. And so what they wanted from us was for us to take a look at all of those issues, come up with some recommendations, and develop, so that they could develop an improvement plan that would take about 3 to 5 years probably to implement. So we set out doing that. The time that we spent in the district amounted to 10 days. We visited 6 sites, so we almost covered a third of your district, and we interviewed 69 people. And we tried to cover the whole gamut, not only district administration, but also special education instructional staff, special ed administrative staff, principals, everybody who would talk to us, basically. And so you have a listing of all of those folks there. This report that is going to be coming out amounts to about 50 pages. And so out of each section of the report, there have been some recommendations made. And so for tonight's meeting, our plan was to just review the recommendations we were making. And we found that the recommendations fell into 6 different categories. The first one was vision, and probably the most important concept that we really felt like a vision needed to be developed on right now was regarding full inclusion, because that's sort of a direction that the district is at least wanting to increase the inclusionary activities for the students with exceptional needs. And at this point in time, people are just hearing lots of discussion, but there hasn't really been a plan put in place that has allowed both staff and administrators and parents and such to buy into. So that's probably the most critical one on that page. The next thing we looked at had to do with staffing. One of the things I looked at was basically the average caseload of all the various programs that are operated in special ed. Special day class, resource specialists, related service providers, which is speech, OT, PT, those. For the most part, other than the psychologist loads, most of them were within what we call industry standards, which means we compare your averages to the averages operated throughout the state. So your special day class averages were actually lower than most places throughout the state. The others, the related service providers and such, were well within the industry standards. However, the psychologists probably were running higher caseloads than most throughout the state. So one of the recommendations there is to increase by 1 psychologist. Probably the biggest concern we found in terms of staffing was administrative personnel and the number of people you have to do the job. There are lots of issues, as you will see on the screen, and you'll read about in the report. And Jack and I personally feel that you probably can't take care of all of those issues with just the director of special ed that you have and the program manager. There are just too many things to deal with. So one recommendation we are making is to consider adding another program manager. The other group of people that we thought seemed to be just really overwhelmed and such, with a lot to do and probably not enough people to do it, are the administrative assistants. So we were recommending there to add one more administrative assistant to make 4, and then have one of those be the director's secretary. Because at this point, Elma, your director of special ed, does not have her own secretary, which is pretty unusual in school districts for special ed. Then, as you start implementing your inclusion project, I think an inclusion specialist is going to be really needed for the district. Are we okay here? All right. The next set of recommendations have to do with communication. I will tell you that when we first came into the district and started asking people, how has the communication been between district and sites, it was just not good. People were concerned. They weren't receiving return phone calls or return emails, or just much response to concerns that they had as they called into the district. I have to say, as we've been working through the district, I really think that has improved some, but it's still an issue that we really need to be focusing on. So one of the recommendations there is to establish an appropriate window of time that people can get back to folks out in the district to their questions, whether it be email or phone calls. A lot of folks basically said, I don't know who to call for what. So while there's probably a list, of staff with, their responsibilities and what they do, they didn't know who to contact. And then the last thing that had been in place, but then last year had kind of dropped off the radar, but now seems to be coming back, are some interdepartmental meetings where general ed and special ed could be meeting and discussing issues more, as well as group meetings of the various disciplines, like having the resource specialists meet together, the psychs meet together, the OTs, the various groups, so they could problem solve some of their issues. So those were the kind of the more important ones with communication. Curriculum and professional development. Probably the major issue on curriculum is with mild, moderate special ed programs. What we were hearing in the field was that there just is not a consistent curriculum utilized in those programs. So teachers are having to kind of pull from hither, thither, and yon to create their programs to be educating their students with. So having the leadership team really take a look at the various curriculums that could be used in special ed would probably be a good idea, and then to adopt one that would be consistently utilized in the mild to moderate programs. Staff development pretty much needs to be done in about every area you can think of. When we were dealing with the various issues, that seemed to be a huge concern, because what we were hearing a great deal was that whether you were talking about principals out at the sites or general ed teachers out at the sites, or special ed, they just were not getting enough staff development on special ed issues to really be implementing what they needed to be implementing. I have to say the visits to the sites were just our favorite thing to do. You have a great set of principals, and the staff out there is feeling very supported by their principals. One issue that did come up, however, was that for sites that are less than 600 ADA, whereas with some, your sites with more than 600 ADA, they get a vice principal. Those with less don't. But some of your sites with less than 600 students, you have kind of above average number of special day classes operating on those sites. And those principals are really kind of drowning. I mean, you figure the more SDC classes you've got on those sites, the more IEP meetings you've got that they have to attend, the more evaluations you have. So having an additional staff member with special ed knowledge might be helpful in those situations. This slide talks about the various areas that the special ed leadership team could conduct a needs assessment on and then determine what kind of staff development could be done in those areas. As you see, there are lots of them. One of the major areas of concern that we heard about revolved around safety. They were concerned that either staff or pupils could be injured and wanted to make sure the teachers had some staff development on de-escalation activities so that they knew how to take care of the children when they were having an episode. And then, of course, just as you're implementing this inclusion plan, there's going to be a lot of staff development needed on that. One of the biggest fears you've got out there, particularly running with the general ed teachers, is that they're hearing, and you know how rumors run, that all the special day classes are going to be done away with. Now, legally, you're not going to be able to do that even if you wanted to, because you've got to have a full continuum of services offered, throughout the district. But they don't know what's going on with all of it. And they're concerned that they haven't had the training to deal with those students. They don't know how to take care of their behaviors or their learning problems. So there's a lot of staff development in that area that needs to be done. One of the gaps that we really discovered with the programming had to do with students with emotional needs. It isn't like you all have a continuum of programs just for ED kids. So if the kids cannot succeed in a special day class, oftentimes they're on a fast track to a non-public school. So you have quite a few non-public school placements. And I know Elma and I have already been discussing the fact that she really wants to get, more behavioral specialists in place and behavior techs, and those folks who have had specific training to deal with students' emotional needs. So that's an area that I would say you really need to concentrate on. You've got contract language kind of governing when you can provide training to your staff, and that kind of does get in the way a little bit of flexibility. So you're probably going to have to look at just adding a couple of mandatory additional days for staff training so that you can provide what needs to be done for those staff members. Procedures and compliance was the next one. Probably the biggest issue we had with this was there really wasn't anything in writing that could be shown to us in terms of a procedural manual. Most districts will have a procedural manual and all kinds of different issues with special ed. Now, I know you have one from the SELPA because we saw that, but it's 10 years old. So, it's very, very outdated. And what that puts the principals in the situation of being is they have to kind of create their own procedures, and they differ from site to site, and then they're not consistent. So that manual is certainly something that would be helpful. The resource specialist caseload is, of course, governed by Ed Code. You cannot go above 28, and you have a provision in your contract that if it goes above a certain number, they get either additional dollars or an additional para. One of the things we did discover was that the CDE waiver that is required by law to be filed, obviously with CDE, if the caseload goes above 28, no one seemed to know anything about that. And that's been in place a long time. So we want to just make sure that that's taken care of. And then if the caseloads are going above the number in your contract, that in a timely manner, that's being responded to. Because what staff are doing now is they're just filing grievances. They won't get back to us, we'll just file a grievance. And that only creates a lot of extra time and paperwork and effort. So, really dealing with things like that in a more timely manner is really going to be critical. The all-call process that is referenced under the procedures and compliance basically has to do with students who have had elopement issues. You have one site that I visited that had developed a pretty good all-call process if a student eloped and people were trying to find him or her. They developed a process that seems to be pretty good in terms of, am I running out of time? No. Oh, okay, 5 more minutes? All right. Anyway, that kind of a process needs to be shared, district-wide, because that's a really, really important issue. Okay. The other things with procedure and compliance that I will highlight, I told you about the full continuum of services definitely needing to be left in place. You have a wonderful district attorney that you work with, and I think that person could develop staff development again for teachers and principals and such in terms of how to write compliant IEPs. There's 700 ways you can make errors on IEPs. Now, you're not going to worry about all 700 of them. However, there are about 10 or 12 that are real significant issues on an IEP that could get a district in trouble. And it's not just keeping you out of trouble, it's making sure that a compliant, appropriate IEP is written for all your children. So that would be a recommendation that I would make for the attorney. And lastly, the last set of recommendations kind of falls under fiscal, and Jack was actually the person on the team that did most of the fiscal analysis, but I had a few items that I felt like came out of the programmatic side that I should share with you. One is he will be talking about the exorbitant amount of money you're paying on private contracts, which is kind of way above and beyond. And so the only way kind of out of that is to hire more of your own employees. So what we were trying to look at was what are some incentives that we could possibly put in place that would attract more employees and or keep your employees so you weren't paying this exorbitant amount of money on your private contracts. And some of them might be, everybody in the world is having trouble finding a speech and language therapist. You are not alone at all in that, or OTs or PTs for that matter. But if you could create a separate pay schedule that would be more of an incentive for those particular professionals, that might attract some. I know before I retired in my old county office, we developed a system with University Pacific where we had part tuition paid for speech therapists going through their program in exchange for so many years of service. And we were able to to fill all our language and speech therapists that way. So, and I know you've done some things with universities and such, but you might consider that. And then finally, signing bonuses. I know that issue has been talked about. It certainly can be an incentive to employees joining you. As well as if you have, particularly with speech therapists, if they have both private and public service and you're only allowing public to be put on the salary schedule, you could look at also taking into account the private service that they have had. So those are just some, ideas for trying to get more people on board. And with that, I'll segue into Jack's discussion because he'll talk a whole lot more about this contracting issue.
Thank you, Sandy. Good evening. Sandy said we have a clear division of labor. She does program and I do fiscal. And it seems to work out well for us. Let me give you 2 quick facts about the state of California before I talk about San Mateo Foster City. First is size of the program. In our last full December count was in 2018. At that time, we were serving 795,000 kids in special education in the state. To kind of put that into perspective, there are 25 states whose total education population is less than our special ed population, and considerably less than that. In terms of money, in 17-18, the last year that we have full data for, we're currently collecting 18-19, we spent $14.9 billion to serve all of our special ed students. Again, to give you kind of a comparison figure, the current federal budget for special education, current this year, is only $13.89 billion. So we are spending more than the total federal budget to serve our population. I think we are an entity of ourselves. No one in the rest of the country comes close to the program that we're operating. Also, of that $13.89 billion, we'll probably get about $1.2 billion. We're a little bit larger than 10% of the state of the country. Okay, so in terms of San Mateo Foster City, one thing that I like to do before I get into numbers is look at who is the population that you're serving in special ed. So these first 2 slides look at that. Table 1, what we're doing is we're comparing total enrollment in the district to total special education population, and then creating a percentage. And this is a 17-year run to see how things have gone over the past several years. In 2002-03, you were serving 11.64% of your kids in special ed. In 18-19, it was down to 9.29%. So over time, what makes you a little bit unique here is that over time, your population has actually decreased in special ed as opposed to grown. Very often, I find the opposite. However, if you look at the last 2 years, 17, 18, 18, 19, you'll see that you're back up above 1,000 again, and it looks like you're in a growing trend, which is what's happening across the state. In special ed, we are growing across the state now every year. The second look that I like to do is to take a segment of the special ed population. So in Table 2, you have the total special ed again, but what I've done this time is to take the count of students with significant disabilities and separate it out. Significant disabilities are everything except learning disabilities, other health impaired, and language and speech. Now, that's about 70% of the population, but it's the students with significant disabilities that very often require the most resources and are therefore the students you spend a large segment of your special ed money on. In 2002-03, that population was 8.35% of your total special ed population. It's grown to 30.67%. What's happening over time is our kids are becoming more needy. They come with more significant needs in special ed. And so even if you're not growing, our costs are increasing because we need to meet those needs. This is all about, I get kind of nervous talking about in terms of dollars and cents, but it is a reality that there are some students who will require more than others. That's what we need to do, and that's what we're required to do. So In terms of that, you look very similar to the state of California. Right now, in 1819, the state was at 28%. You're at 30%, slightly higher. But you're in that growth, and in fact, this is a national thing that's been happening across the country. The final thing I did was break out autism, because autism by itself has become a major growth factor in special education. So autism is included in significant disabilities, but you can see that of your total 236 kids, 185 were children with autism. Again, that's the way it is statewide as well. Statewide, it's about 14% of the total population at this point, and every year it is growing. There's nothing to indicate that that's going to change at any time. All right, on to funding. First thing to remind you of is there are three sources of funding for special ed programs: state entitlement funds, federal grant funds, and of course your district general fund. Those are the three sources. What's important here to remember is that state funds and federal funds are always a fixed sum. Each year we get money from the state. In your case, it flows through the SELPA to you, but those are fixed sum. What is constantly changing is the your general fund contribution. You always make up the difference in cost. And you can do the best job in budgeting and have everything perfect, but kids keep coming to be served. Every year you're gaining new kids. You can have kids transfer in. And so special ed is constantly changing. And no matter how well you do in terms of budgeting, you may or may not be close to it depending on who's coming in any given year. And that is a reality that we really face. So what I did here was to take 9 years of costs for special education in the top section and then compared to revenue in the lower section. What's significant is in the total expenditures column, what you see is over that 9-year period, your special ed cost has grown by $7.67 million, or $7.68 million. That's very typical in terms of what's happening to districts across the state. You're really no different in that. Going down to look at revenue, if you go down to the very bottom and look at combined state and federal, what you see is it was only $1.24 million in additional revenue. What that means is you've made the difference up coming out of your general fund. And again, that's the pattern for everybody. You're no different in that respect. So the other thing I did was then to take the general fund contribution and create a percentage of total, percentage of total cost. And if you look at that final, the right-hand column down in the bottom there, what you see is in 1819 it was 67, it was 67%. In other words, more than 2/3 of the money for special ed is coming out of your general fund. Going back to 1718, because that's the last comparison year I have for the state. State was at 65%. You were pretty high at 69%. But again, you're running slightly higher every year, but this is where everybody is. You're in so that in terms of the rest of the state, in districts in the state, size doesn't seem to matter. This is a pattern that we see. Almost 2/3 of the money now is coming out of the general fund as opposed to state and federal funding. Next thing I wanted to do was take a little bit different look at costs. We were looking there by kind of program. In this one, we're now looking at object code. And you can see that we're talking about certificated and classified employees and salaries and books and supplies and services. That's the breakdown by object code. You would expect that salaries have increased over that time. You've been getting additional funds since 13-14 from the new funding model. And so that was expected. What was not expected here was the fact that you had a $6.7 million increase over the 9 years in services, 5,000 category services. That was something that I have not seen before. And in fact, in 1819, the 5,000 series was almost 50% of your total cost in 1819. So that I looked at that and decided I wanted to go another step and find out what was causing that. So then what I did from there then was to take the 5,000 series and break it down by function. And you can see the various categories there: travel, non-public school cost, transportation. Non-public school contracts are somewhat higher, but that's where you are at this point in time in terms of the kids that you have to serve. That's going to be generated based on need and based on IEPs. What was very different was going on to looking at special day and RSP, and this is what Sandy was talking about. You've had an increase of almost $4 million in terms of the cost of hiring teachers and SDC teachers, resource specialist teachers through contract agencies, as opposed to being able to employ them. That's something that's I think makes it somewhat unique for you. Other special ed services, as Sandy was saying, you expect to see contract costs there because of the language and speech issue that's been on for probably 20 years or more. After doing that and looking at it and finding out that, there's something unique here about the district, what I then tried to do was to see if I could come up with some comparison districts to see how do you look in terms of districts that might compare to your size and configuration. I went through the list of all the districts in the state, tried to pick elementary districts that were close to your size, and also matched you in terms of percentage of kids with free and reduced price meal count, because I think those two factors are important. I came up with 3 districts. They're not exactly perfect matches. One, Evergreen School District, is in Santa Clara County to the south of you. Roseville City is up in Placer County, out towards Sacramento. Fullerton School District's in North Orange County. I'm familiar with that district because I live just in LA County, just across the border. I think they're relatively good matches in terms of comparables to you. There were not a lot of districts that matched the other two that were your size in elementary districts. There were smaller districts, there were a few that were larger, but these were the 3 that seemed to come closest to you. I did a couple things. First, just for comparison purposes, I took total special ed costs, divided by the pupil count, and came up with average cost per pupil. And what you see there is you're about $4,900 higher than the other 3 districts. That's directly related to that $5,000 cost that you're having to put out for hiring teacher staff. The second one, what I did was compare total district expenditures to special ed. Took special ed as a percentage of total district expenditures. There you're very similar. Evergreen, for some reason, was always smaller than the other 3, but matching to the other 2 districts, you're very similar in terms of your total special ed cost as a percentage of total expenditures. The other thing I wanted to do was then see what did they look like in terms of this 5,000 object series. So the bottom section is that breakdown. And what's very clear there is none of them had, contract costs that were anywhere close to yours. So it says that, this is something that you've had to resort to in order to have teaching staff in your classrooms. It is, and as Sandy was saying, it is very costly, obviously, and it does set you apart. Otherwise, I think you're very comparable. I can't see that you're doing something that's drastically different from anybody else. You're in the same problem of having to put more and more general fund in because we're getting limited federal, especially federal funds, and limited state entitlement funds. And that's happening everywhere, unfortunately. That certainly doesn't make you feel any better, I'm sure, but that is the reality that we're facing. I'm going to stop there. I want to say 2 things. First of all, I did some of the visitations with Sandy, and I have to say that I really enjoyed that. For the past 10 years, I've been going up and down the state working with SELPAs and districts. One of the things I find is that there's always dedicated people out there working with our kids. That's the one constant that I see wherever I go. You'll find variations, but always you see these very dedicated people, and that's great. I also wanted to thank Christine from the business office. I was constantly badgering her to ask for figures, and she was having to stop and give me things, but I appreciate it very much, Christine. And with that, I'll close and see you then.
Thank you, Jack. Madam President and Board of Trustees, Superintendent Roses, good evening. We would like to thank Dr. Clute and Mr. Lucas for your guidance and recommendations. Moving forward, our initial response would be to share results to develop action plans. The results of the audit will be shared with the special education leadership team, the CDAC, leadership team, district leadership team, and SELPA. We will prioritize recommendations with stakeholders. We will set timelines, determine resources, and assign personnel to undertake or the challenge of certain responsibilities. We will create a communication plan for all stakeholders, and we will provide update to the board in March 2020. Please be assured that the Special Education Department, with the leadership of Dr. Sarah Drinkwater and myself, are committed in moving the department forward. We are now opening the forum for questions.
I don't have questions right now, but I just want to say that I think we all knew an audit was needed and that there are many areas of improvement. But it's always a little disheartening to have it like in your face and tangible. I appreciate your time for conducting and preparing the audit, and to all of those that were interviewed and involved. And then my game plan was already addressed in terms of the action plans for all of these recommendations, so thank you.
I wanted to make a comment. Thank you for all your work. This is really eye-opening information, at least for me. Just looking at, I'm trying to think back to a presentation we had a couple meetings ago. I think, David, you did that, and where we looked at comparing our district, and I think I commented at that time the special education students were below in achievement for like our comparable districts and with our state. So it's a little disappointing. I mean, it's disappointing to see how much more we're spending and not seeing those results. And so I think, this is, again, very eye-opening to where you almost think we're spending money that's not showing those results. It kind of seems like a really inefficient way of spending money. And so I look forward to at least hearing more about what the plan is going forward and how we see some results and spending the money a little bit in a more efficient way. Go ahead.
Just to clarify, are we going to do questions and then comment and then discussion, or?
Sorry.
Noelia? No, it's totally fine. I just wanted to know because I did have a couple just questions, and that's totally fine. One was, I had a question about the MPS-MPA contract number. So I know that it's pretty significantly higher than the other comparable districts. I was curious as to number of students in those, under each of those contracts. I guess my question is it higher because the schools that we're sending kids to cost more than the schools that folks are sending kids to in these districts? Or are we sending more, or do we have more kids per, what is that? Yeah.
It could be some of it could be some of both. I kind of think it's you have more kids in non-public schools than others. That's not unusual given your district, given the district and the population that you serve. I think you'll find other districts. It happened with these districts. It doesn't show, but you can have higher concentrations of non-public school costs. Okay.
This is, I guess, sort of a question and sort of a next step. I know the recommendations are obviously based on the information that you've gathered. I would be interested, and maybe this is in the original report, which I don't think that we have yet, I would be really interested to know just the trends kind of in comments based on the various groups, right? So kind of parents and site staff and so that's just, yeah, I can make inferences about what the comments were based on your recommendations, right? But to have that all spelled out, I think would be helpful. Mm-hmm. Those are my questions.
Questions? Any questions? I did have a question, but I'm having trouble finding the exact bullet point in the recommendation area. There's a lot there, obviously. I remember seeing something about the possible like over-identification, like there was like one area that was disproportionate. Like over-identification of Latino students in special ed. Can you speak to that a little more, please?
That had to do with the Hispanic.
Can you get the mic, please?
One of the items that the PIR, Performance Indicator Report, had indicated was that there was a higher incident of Hispanics being identified in, I believe it was the ED population. And so, the district put together a response to CDE based on that PIR. And that was very well done. So they have various strategies that they have lined out as to how they're going to attempt to bring that disproportionality in sync with where it's supposed to be. The bigger concern, because it wasn't very far off, it was just a little bit disproportionate. The concern I had with the ED population had more to do with the lack of programming for those students. And Elma and I have been talking about the fact that she's really interested in getting, more behavioralists involved, where they can do behavioral functional assessments and develop behavioral service plans for those kids. It's a tough population to serve, but when you don't have a kind of a stream of classes addressing that particular population, then if the teachers trying to serve them aren't trained to deal with those behaviors, those are the ones that are going to end up in non-public schools. So I think under Elma's leadership, with some of those changes, you're going to see some changes in your ED population going to non-public school. Staff and parents are concerned, about the safety of their kids, as are all of you. And so that's just an area that really needs some attention. And it's talked about more in the report as well.
Thank you. And just one more clarifying question. And I just want to make this super, clear. In your experience, would you say that we have many more recommendations than other districts that you've worked with?
Probably somewhat more. And I know that, it appears a little bit overwhelming because there were so many. But it just seemed like the opportune time, because of this desire to put in place this 3 to 5 year improvement plan, that it was just time to draw attention to a lot of those. I tend to be a little tenacious about stuff, and so, the others had lots of recommendations too. So special ed is fraught with all kinds of concerns and issues. There's just no getting around that. And if you know what they are, and some of them are pretty simple fixes. Others, are going to take some more time and attention. But I really am optimistic, especially working with Alma the short time I've been able to work with her, and also Tracy, and hopefully we're going to get some additional help in that department, that I think you're going to see some real change, in the next year or so. And I'm going to be following up with her too to see how things are going.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, we're moving on. Oh,
Can I-
but this is directed towards Alma.
Could I add one comment?
Yes,
I forgot.
absolutely.
There was one thing that I forgot. I wanted to recommend that consider putting a person in the business office who would be primarily responsible for special ed and would be a liaison back and forth. I think of all the programs that operate in the district, special ed, as I said earlier, is the most volatile. And there ought to be regular communication between program and business staff. With all of the non-public school contracts, the agency contracts, there's a lot to keep track of. And I think it would be helpful, and it might also be able to see earlier what's happening within that if that was added. That was the one recommendation I forgot to say.
Thank you. So I was just, for Alma, with all of the action plan items, do any of them include working with surrounding schools to see what their best practices and programs are? And also, you are providing an update in March, which is next month. Are all of these or any of these going to be completed to give us an update?
We will certainly strategize in order to be able to provide an update in March. And I've worked with several school districts, and so they could be one or several of those that we will be looking at as far as, how they're running their programs. But we have a very close relationship with San Mateo County Office of Education, SALPA, and we have regular interactions with other school districts, and so they will become our resources as well.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to public comment. How many speaker slips do we have?
One.
One. Okay.
Board President Corzo, we have one speaker, Mr. Stephen Davis.
And I'm sorry, before you start, Stephen, didn't we have another one that they weren't here on time and now? Did you also, okay, we have them. Do we have that already?
Joan has it.
Okay, so, go ahead.
Okay,
You're up
sorry.
here.
I apologize. I am fighting that wicked cough that everybody seems to be having around here. First of all, it is nice to hear that the district is paying attention to inclusion. It has been the law for a very long time. Two, I'm glad you're all really excited to go to an equity network at the county level. Disability is an equity issue. While we spend a lot of time talking about IDEA, we don't talk about the 504 of the Civil Rights Law, which is where we should really be starting all the time, which is that we don't discriminate against people, and particularly in this case, we don't discriminate against people with disabilities. And this district has done this for years. We talked about we were talking in this about fiscal and programs, but what we haven't been talking about is the kids. The kids in our district spend an awful lot of time away from other kids in our district. No mention was made that we have a highly segregated program in a highly segregated state. No discussion. Oh, excuse me, that's just a point of correction. We do not have a special education district advisory committee. We have a superintendent's committee that has been never chartered, not been chartered by the district, by the board, and the PTA dissolved the special ed PTA group with the belief that this would be created, and it has not happened yet. If you look at all the programming, staffing, communication stuff, you know what it all reduces down to is lack of leadership. A great lack of leadership and a great lack of attention to this program, because none of this today is news. You have been hearing it for years from parents and teachers and staff. They have been telling you, and you have been not asking questions of the district professional staff, and the district professional staff has done nothing. And so we are here today, and the big question is, what are you going to do, and when are you going to do it? Because every day and every year that you don't do anything, our kids get left farther behind. You may not know this, but my son Jeff, who's got autism, is doing great this year. And he is doing great. I am lucky, and you are lucky. I am lucky because I am a privileged, educated, white guy who has enough time to fight you guys on this and able to hire a lawyer. You are lucky because you happen this year to send him to San Mateo Park, who has a leader who is committed to inclusion and education of all kids. And that is the difference. There's nothing magic about that. It's about caring. And it's time to see some from this school district and staff.
Joan, next.
So this was Jen Mayman, and yes, and you were going to speak?
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Mayman, and I'm the Vice Chair of the CDAC, which is the Special Education District Advisory Committee. I'm also a parent at George Hall, and I'd like to just give the Board of Trustees a brief update on the work of the CDAC. This seemed like the best place in the agenda for this update, so it's not really a public comment related to the audit, sort of tangentially related. We held our third meeting of the year on January 14th and had 30 parents, teachers, and administrators in attendance. We began our meeting with 30 minutes of public comment, where meeting attendees could ask questions or make comments, and each question or comment was assigned to a district employee for follow-up. The remainder of the meeting was dedicated to sharing and listening about communication, both what's working and what isn't. Major takeaways were that, in many cases, communication between teachers, principals, and parents was very strong, and then a number of ideas were shared to improve direct communication between districts and parents directly. At our January 14th meeting, 2 committees were formed, one to draft a mission and vision for the group, and one to draft the group's bylaws. Both of these committees are meeting within the next few weeks, so we're really getting it off the ground. Our next meeting is March 24th at 7 p.m. here at the district office. We will again have the opportunity for public comment and hope to have someone from the district provide an update on our communication discussion from the January meeting. We also hope to have some focused discussion on this evening's audit report, and we'll conclude with a special education LCAP engagement session. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now or later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're up for discussion. So I'll start. There's a lot of work to be done, as we all now understand, and it's absolutely true that we have had, a lot of voices being raised and heard in terms of the concerns. I'm happy that there's a lot of energy around this because, more often than not, that's not the case. And I really think that, I appreciate, all of the parents, all of the teachers that have come up and spoken to the issues that are, that our special ed students are facing, and also our staff that work with them. All of those concerns are really valid. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that there's a lot of work to be done. It's, it's really heavy and it's difficult to sit with. But, we also have to, we have to be really action oriented and action focused. And I'm glad that we'll be getting an update from our district next month with a plan. It has to be a really thorough and, urgent plan. Absolutely. I also just want to say that I actually work with folks with special needs as well, and I work for Golden Gate Regional Center. And next week, a bunch of us as social workers are getting together to write letters to our legislators and our governor because in our system, the regional center system, we have we are underfunded. We had a rate study done recently, and we're underfunded by $1.8 billion. And those are services, and that's money that belongs and that the families have a right to. Services that are outside of school district the school district scope. Also in my job, I actually go to a lot of IEP meetings, and I'm actually on the other side in other school districts, not this one, of course. So, I know what it feels like to advocate for things, and I also know what it feels like to, be on the other side and hear that, we can't find the staff, and recognize that it's really hard to find staff and keep consistent staff because there's such a high rate of turnover, in the field of working with folks with special needs, because it's not well funded. It's just not. But that doesn't mean that we can't have high standards here. I also just want to say real quick that, we did not create this system. We inherited it, and we absolutely sit with and hold the responsibility for, improving it, dismantling it if we have to, and building it up again. So I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. I think it's going to take our entire community to make, to create the best plans and action steps moving forward. But we are deeply committed to doing that, and, we want to hear everyone's voice, and we want to work together on this, because we are really equity focused, and equity means everyone. It means every single student, and our students with the most needs, and special ed students are absolutely, included in that. So those are my comments. Anyone else?
Thank you, both for your work in our district. I feel really appreciative of this conversation. I feel like it is really the first time that we've had a fully transparent, formal presentation about the state of things, kind of holistically, about what's happening in special education in our district. And so I think, the first step in sort of any significant change is just stopping and saying, we have a problem here, right? And yes, we knew that via stories, via conversation, and that we know it's been a challenge. That's the reason why we asked for this audit almost a year ago. Do I wish we would have asked for this audit 2 years ago? Absolutely. I didn't know that this was a possibility, right, as a process until I think I shared with you guys that I was at, a dinner with other school board members, and this was something that another school board had done to address special education issues and brought it here, and we decided to move forward with this, and kind of that's how we're now getting this presentation. So, it is true that it's long overdue, and it is, but I'm also glad that instead of kind of jumping to solutions without having the full picture, like while this took time, I feel like there is a full picture that has a lot of stakeholders in an organized manner, and now the district, and we are all responsible for ensuring that there is a plan that is presented in March and that is followed through with. As we've said in other difficult situations, we are all, here, and you guys are all as active participants in our community, keep us accountable to that. I mean, we are committed, or I am, I'll speak for myself. I think I can speak for everybody else too, but committed to ensuring that happens. I also just want to say for a moment, I know, Alma, you're brand new, and so these are all challenges that you inherited. Many of us inherited this as well, right? This is not something that kind of just happened. But I am really appreciative for your willingness to tackle these complex issues, just kind of digging in with a positive attitude. I know that, and just for your kind of humility and just taking this for what it is, and plowing ahead full steam. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. I think having that leadership is really important, and so I'm grateful for that. I'll echo what Trustee Corzo said. I mean, this is not a good place for us to be in. And And a lot of this is stuff that we knew. I think some components are things that maybe we didn't have as deep of insight into as we now do, and so thank you for that, and I look forward to having the full report. In addition to I know that you referenced our response to the PIR. I don't think that we've seen that. I think that that would be helpful to see as well, just so we kind of know what we're working with, and for that to be incorporated into, having a streamlined plan that's working with the county with regards to kind of what they're saying needs to happen with what Trustee Corzo mentioned about the disproportionality, in addition to the recommendations that you guys are providing. I agree, there's some small or low-hanging fruit in terms of things that need to happen, right? Like, we need to be responsive to people when they email us. That's not a negotiable thing. That just needs to happen. That's something that can happen now, today, right? And it should. And then there are things that are going to take a lot of planning, and that's okay too. We need to do those things simultaneously, and I look forward to that. I did ask the question about NPS and NPA. I've been concerned about that, and so I did want to know a little bit about whether or not that was a numbers thing or a cost thing based on our area. I too thought that it was probably a numbers thing, and I am concerned with the possibility of over-placing kids, and so I just want to make sure that that's a part of this plan. I mean, I know that many of these things are going to be a part of this plan, but that it's a part of this plan to be very, very clear around how we are servicing students before that is something that's ever on the table. And particularly knowing that, things like the classification of emotional disturbance can be real subjective. And how we're supporting students in the classroom can really determine, how long they're going to be able to stay within their system and whether or not they're going to be successful there. So that's definitely something that's really important. I don't know. I could talk for a long time about all of the areas, but I think I'm looking forward to seeing the plan and then going from there in terms of areas to address. But I do appreciate feeling like from a formal presentation standpoint, to me, this feels like the first time that we've just said, hey, it's not good.
I want to thank you guys for the presentation and for the audit. It's very thorough in terms of the recommendations. You definitely have dove into a lot of the areas that are needed. I would agree with Trustee Watkins about we have had updates in the past, but sometimes it takes a third party to really dive into the whole details and look at everything that we really need to look at. It is a really tough issue, and it feels like we have, whether because of staffing changes that have constantly happened, it seems like there have been sort of Band-Aids on top of Band-Aids, and now we're really trying to dive in to try and fix that wound. I did like there's a couple points in the recommendations that I really thought were really insightful. Beyond sort of, so the staffing, the staffing, the comment about the additional, when we have 600 students and the above we usually get a VP or an AP, I'm sorry, and below we don't, and the sort of ever increasing numbers of IEPs, which we know that is going up, and it has gone up and it keeps going up. That and then the emotional needs of the students, I think, is a big issue as well. And then the staffing, just in terms of the comments about, this is anecdotal, but someone had told me that 2/3 of the special day classroom teachers in the state, I think, was vacant, or there's just constant turnover in these classrooms at the staffing level. That's really hard to keep teachers. I have a really good friend who is a special education teacher in San Francisco, and he has been teaching at a couple of different, I think, middle schools for the last 15 years. And he's been in such demand that he has actually gone on sabbatical twice during his tenure. And he's allowed to because there's just so much demand. And it's just incredible. But there's a true need for dedicated staff. And I will say we do have dedicated staff. We've heard them. They've been to our meetings. They've voiced their comments to us, and we have heard them. I do feel like now with the audit, we're in a much more like holistic place in terms of looking at it. Instead of putting additional Band-Aids on, I feel like we can actually really dive deep and make some real changes. And so I want to thank you for conducting the audit. I want to thank the teachers and the staff who have definitely, put up through the Band-Aids through the years. And I just hope that we actually really go forward and make some changes. I'd be very curious in our meeting in March, what the recommendations come from, what the recommendations are. But with the understanding that, this is a system, when you look at the sheer numbers, it's kind of like the analogy of how do you move a mountain, right? You move it with one shovel at a time, right? And this is going to take some time. And I think the issue is that it's going to take time, and it's going to take commitment from us to keep moving and keep shoveling to make sure that we actually move. Or I'm sorry, I had too many analogies with the Band-Aids and the mountains. I'm sorry about that. I'm not thinking today. So I will just say that I do really appreciate the report and the recommendations. I do think that we have some recommendations where we can really move forward. And I look forward to our next meeting in March where we will have stuff to further talk about. Thank you.
I was just going to briefly say, because I agree with everything that you guys said, but again, thank you again. This is really great. I think that it's not easy to take stock in where you are and really take an honest look, and so this is a good, although disappointing, it's a good starting point. And I know things take time, and it's a process, and we're going to have goals and everything, but when we think about this 3 to 5 year plan, I just want to make sure we're thinking that there's students, teachers, and staff that have been doing this for longer than 3 to 5 years, and so we need to do what we can now and make an impact for the students and the teachers and the staff that are already kind of dealing with this. And some of these students won't be in our district in 3 to 5 years, so I think it's really important that we do what we can. But thank you again. I really appreciate this.
And I'll make one more comment. I didn't mention earlier that I think that, that focusing on our special needs students is actually, it's actually what we need to do for equity, because special needs cut across race, they cut across economic class. Like, there's just, it's, I've seen that in my work. I've gone to, work with families that are living in Hillsborough, that are living in like a bunch of acres of property in Atherton, and I've also been to like, someone's home in a garage in East Palo Alto, and so yeah. Sorry, that's. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not feeling that well, so I'm right there with you, Ken. Do we have any other comments? No? Okay. So before we move on to our next agenda item, I did want to just have a short break, a 5-minute break, so that we can use the restroom really quickly. So we'll be back in 5.
We're also looking at adding a common email address that would go to the board president and copy out to the board. So those things are in process, but tonight, with those two revisions, it's recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the updated governance handbook.
Do I have a motion?
To approve the updated governance handbook?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to CSBA Delegate Assembly election.
So annually, there is an election of officers for the California School Boards Association Delegates Assembly, and we are in Subregion 5B. There are 3 seats open, 3 candidates running. Amy Coe, Belmont Redwood Shores, Clayton Coe, Jefferson Elementary School District, and Eddie Flores from South San Francisco. And the resumes were attached to your packet, and so we need to decide on who you would like to elect. You can elect all 3, and then I will send the form in as soon as you have finalized your decision.
So I would motion to nominate or vote for all 3. 3 for 3. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Oh.
All right.
And we are moving on to our educator housing update.
All right. As Anna brings that up, this is not a new topic for our district. Could you start with the presentation that one first, and then we'll move to our guests. This is not a new topic, but housing for educators is really gaining momentum at this point in time. Next. There is still and continues to be, there has been and continues to be a need for housing. We had done a survey in 2016 of our staff that showed that 220 staff members were very interested in living in any rental housing provided at below market rate that might be offered. And the same survey showed that 308 staff members were considering relocating due to the cost of living. So this wasn't all that long ago. In 2009, the city of San Mateo also put out a survey, and they received 800 responses, and 112 were from our staff who are renting. It was an interest survey in housing. Next slide, please. More recently, there have been groups that have formed to address this need, and these are some of the committees that have been formed. We have the Homeroom Committee, which is a local one. That is our district's little committee. We have a chair, Sue Lempert. We have Community College involved, San Mateo Union High School District, Jefferson Unions come, San Mateo County Office of Ed, the City of San Mateo, staff from Kevin Mullen's office, the San Mateo Rotary, Mid-Penn Housing, Heart, HIP. We've had a number of people involved with this group in helping us learn more about what options there are for our staff and where we might go with our own projects. We also are participating in Home for All, and we've worked with HIP, Heart, CalPath, and Landed. Those are all groups that help support acquisition of housing. And we also have been involved with Housing Leadership Council. Now, there is a new initiative in Foster City, and it is called Home is Foster City. And we'd like to welcome Dante Hall. He's the Assistant City District Manager, and he has a PowerPoint to give you an update on what's going on in Foster City.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
You can go with this or page down.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you for the opportunity, Madam President and Board. In Foster City, we are starting this new initiative called Home is Foster City, And I just want to briefly talk about it tonight and invite you and others to get engaged in the process in Foster City. There's a lot of things related to housing that are coming down the pike, a lot of state mandates that are really forcing a lot of cities to really strategize around housing and how we provide affordable housing. And so what we want to do is start a conversation with our community to hopefully come into our own strategy for what the future of housing in Foster City is going to look like. And so tonight, I wanted to talk about the initiative. Most of us, obviously, are impacted by housing. You know, we live where we live because it's close to work, it's close to our loved ones, or it's basically what you can afford. But there are a lot of other groups, like we've been talking about, that are more affected than others. It's the medium and low income people in the county and that work for us or work with us. And so in Foster City, we have this tension that's going on there. People in Foster City really love the city because of its small town feel, because of the character, and they really want to protect that. And so we want to have a conversation about how we can tailor and craft a solution that allows us to protect the things that people value, but also provide for some of the housing and different things that are going to be forced upon us. I don't know what I did here. That are going to be forced upon us. I hate to put it that way, but that's pretty much what is going to happen, and how we do that in a way that works for everyone. And so I wanted to just go through, I know you know a lot of this stuff, but just a little bit about Foster City. Our ages are pretty even. Median housing range is up there. We're pretty balanced in the types of housing that we have in Foster City. The median housing value is about 1.5. We have about almost 59% or 58.3% owners to renters. And the average monthly rent for a two-bedroom in Foster City is $3,600 a month. And so who works in Foster City? We get about 20,000 employees that come in and out of Foster City every day. And if you really looked at the median income of those people, you're at about $95,000 median. So you have a lot of high, a lot of low, but the median is $95,000. A person earning $95,000 cannot afford a one-bedroom in Foster City. We did some analysis about the travel, and like I said, we have about 18.6 people coming in and people going out. And what that has led to, obviously, is this sprawl that's led to a lot of other symptoms like traffic, congestion. It really feeds into the productivity of employees. It feeds into the ability to recruit talent. So there's a lot of symptoms that I'm sure that the district is dealing with, but also the city and also some of our local businesses. This is a little stat that we just did. We did about a week ago, and what this tells us in one of our zones, we have about the average time that a worker travel to Foster City is about 46 minutes, 45 minutes. And so again, there's a lot of people higher than that, a lot of people lower than that. So you have these mega commutes that are happening. And so we want to make sure that people know that we all play a part in housing. A lot of people believe or think that the city can kind of do what they want, they can approve or disapprove things, but we all want to join in the conversation of what we do about housing. And so we have a couple of meetings that are coming up. I provided you with a little flyer of that, but we have one of our first community meeting is April 21st, and we like to invite people to that. The second community conversation is going to be May 16th, and you'll see us around in shopping centers. We want to get as broad of a spectrum of people to come in and be engaged with us as we together try to figure out a solution for our city. And lastly, to learn more about it, we have Foster City, Home is Foster City, a website. Please stay engaged, and we welcome the participation of your parents, of your workers that work in Foster City. Again, we just really want to get as many voices to the table as possible as we find out a solution. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming and explaining about this new initiative and the upcoming community opportunities. Anna Alman, would you put mine back up, please, and so that I can continue with that? So with these many housing projects, what have we worked on? The one before that? We have made connections with HIP and HART and CalPath and Landed. We've been able to send out news information, news updates to our staff so that possibly they could use that. We have had staff look at Landed for acquiring their first home. We have also worked with Kevin Mullen's office to pass legislation, and that legislation did come out of this district. That legislation particularly allows any staff housing that's built by one district can be used by another district. That had tax implications before. Now that barrier has been eliminated. So if San Mateo Union High School District, for example, should put some housing up, our staff would be able to utilize it also, should they not take all of their own spots. There have been a number of district projects that have been completed. Santa Clara has completed 70 units. CSM, Kenyatta College, you may have been up there and seen them, 104 units. Mount Wisman Unified, they've done 144 units. And there are district projects that are in process. Jefferson Union, you may have seen them recently in the news. They were breaking ground on their new project. San Mateo Union is in process. Pacifica is in process. San Francisco has a goal of 550 units by 2030. And city projects. San Mateo has one now going in with mid-pin housing, and it sounds like Home is Foster City may have something coming up too. And they're really beautiful. Yes, there's the Jefferson schematic, and there's another one to show Wisman. They're beautiful complexes. So I guess the question comes back to us again. What are the options for San Mateo Foster City educators? Obviously, we can connect with other districts. We can connect with the cities of San Mateo and Foster City. And also, we probably should be looking at our own options. Should we purchase maybe some developed property, working with developers to maybe that are coming into our district, that maybe they would provide some housing from in those 900 units that are going in over at the Passage? Would they provide any of that for our educators? Should we develop any of the land that we own? So it's an ongoing conversation. We have taken steps. We have improved our access, but there's still much more that we believe we can do. And I know that our liaisons to the housing committees probably have some things they'd like to add, and I thank them for helping me put this PowerPoint together.
So I just wanted to add, we have been talking about educator housing for a while. It has been a big topic. As these other districts, as Jefferson had put their general obligation bond on the ballot last year and got it passed, as Wishman has gone forward and worked with developers to define what a community benefit is for that large development in Mountain View. As San Mateo Unified High School District has sold Crestmore or is about to sell Crestmore and will have money to develop either at Mills or back up at there was another site, sorry, at Crestmore, or developed at Crestmore. The issue is, it's a big issue. We find when we talk about, special education staffing, and we hear about, RSPs and paraeducators and other teachers not having enough housing. We heard a year or so ago, I remember someone telling me that they were a teacher was couch surfing in our district. And one of the paraeducators was actually flying in once a week from Colorado because it actually made financial sense at the time. These are all real issues. If you don't own a home, there's that housing instability is the term they call it. Most of the districts that I've learned through Home for All is you're either land rich and cash poor or cash rich and land poor, which I actually found odd because I never thought that a district would actually be cash rich. But now there actually are. As an example, San Mateo Unified High School District, once they sell the property, will be technically cash rich, and they need to find out what they want to do with their money, and they're looking at options. What Joan had mentioned in terms of AB 1157, that did come out of the Home Committee. And what's coming out of Home for All now is a modification to that, which that changed and allowed school districts to basically work together, but not school districts and cities in some ways. And they might be able to, but there's a little tax issue going on, and there's some confusion. And so there is legislation that's going to be going through that came out of the Home for All discussions that's going to clarify that and open the doors up further. So the reason for this topic tonight is that we've reached a point, as most other Home for All attendees, is that it's gone from us sort of liaisons talking, and now for us to actually make a decision, are we actually seriously thinking about this? And the way to seriously move forward is basically the board has to say yes, in a public forum, that yes, we are looking for, into educator housing. If we did that, there's a couple options that I have that we see right now that are on our forefront. One I sort of just mentioned, mainly because we've been in the educator housing discussions. People have come up to us internally or publicly and stated certain things, and one of them is San Mateo Unified High School District. There has been a comment that if they are selling Crestmore, but if they can't figure out where to build the other housing, they might start looking for other districts, feeder districts like us, who might have land, and we might be able to collaborate with them. So that's an option that could be coming forward to us. Another option is to look at our own land itself. We know that we have certain properties that are underutilized. You look at the Knowles site, you look at the site in North Central, you look at the site that we're sitting in right now is a one-story office building in Foster City, which theoretically you look around and look at all the high-rise Gilead buildings and think, gosh, you could really build a really tall building here. The other thing that people don't know is that we also own, it's probably about as large as 6 acres next to Bayside STEM Academy, which is currently, as we went through when we were building Bayside or approving the Bayside gym, we have a current agreement with the city of San Mateo that allows them to use it as a park. So it's Joinville Park. When I was prior to being on the school board, I was on the City of San Mateo's Parks and Recreation Facilities Master Plan, where they looked at building all these different community centers, like in Bay Meadows, or the King Center, or on the east side of 101 at Joinville. And the problem that they had with Joinville is that they didn't own the land that was around Joinville. They owned the pool, basically, and the building itself. And it's like a postage-sized stamp of a piece of property in a much larger area, which we own completely. One of the thoughts that I had was, and this is a question for you guys if we move forward, is if there are any interest to investigate doing maybe a land swap or some sort of agreement with the city of San Mateo, because as Dr. Roses had mentioned, the city of San Mateo is actually building now 225 affordable units in downtown San Mateo. They recently just upped it 60 units because of another housing law that just changed, and so they'll be adding 60 more units to that property. One of the thoughts that could happen, and I think there are some ins and outs of this, but what if we could potentially trade our property for actual educator housing units there at that site? Or something else, we're working with the city of San Mateo in some other form or fashion. And so what I would suggest is basically if we can get some sort of consensus that, yes, we are into educator housing and we are looking to do something about it, to allow me just to inquire with the city if there is any interest on their part, and then to come back, and if there is any interest, maybe one of the solutions is we form some sort of ad hoc committee to actually further dive into the details. The thing about housing is that there's no silver bullet. You know, Jefferson had to do a general obligation bond. Mountain View Wishman had to do a agreement with a developer. CSM did their own thing. There's no silver bullet for this, and I think we have to be creative, but I think it's worth a try. And if it works out, maybe it works out, and that would be great. But if not, then we'll try something else. So the last thing I will say is that anecdotally, Jefferson, when we talk about attraction and retention, Jefferson Unified High School District, because they just broke ground on their new development, they're building, what was the amount? Was it 100 and, sorry, it was, because they're building,
I don't know how many there
oh, gosh, yeah, it's not on there. I thought it was 200 units. They already are attracting new staff, teachers and staff. So, and they have already said that they are actually coming there because of the workforce housing that they're building. So, I could answer questions, or if you guys want to just.
If anyone else has.
Oh,
yeah.
good.
So if the board is interested in this direction, you would direct staff to explore that with the city?
Explore.
If you have suggested an exploratory conversation with the city of San Mateo, so you would want to direct staff to do that?
That's fine.
So that it would come back to you as a decision.
Yeah, before we do that, though, folks have other.
I just wanted to.
That's fine. I just think that there's a lot of ins and outs on this, and I think there's a lot of issues, and I just want to know if they're even interested, that's all. So,
Yeah, I think maybe, I think there are a couple options you threw out, and I think there are probably others on the table. And so I wonder about potentially moving forward with doing a little bit of research on a couple of them and then bringing them back for, for discussion and then making a decision about potentially how we want to move forward. I know, we talked about, we'll be having the facilities master plan update. We'll be looping that into a conversation about a potential bond. That's something that we then talked about incorporating teacher housing. So obviously we'll have to pull that and all of that. But I think even within that, partnering, with our cities around that is a great idea. I mean, I also thought of this property, right, as a property that is not a great use of space now, given, how we could potentially build it and how it could be utilized both as a district office and staff housing. So I do think that's something worth thinking about as we move forward with possible solutions. And I also think the developer route in terms of purchasing units, I mean, we were in conversation Ken and I a year and a half ago with the passage, and that was something that they threw out in terms of something that they would absolutely be willing to partner with us on, in terms of purchasing units that we could then turn around to our staff. So, I don't know if there are places, I think that there are probably more developers that would be open to those conversations. And so I think having those, so I think potentially following up with Brian Myers and seeing kind of what that would entail, right? Like what would our next steps be with that? Dollar amounts, all those kinds of things, so that we're able to make informed decisions about what seems to make the most sense. I also think when we go out and kind of explore some of these options, obviously bringing it back to us, but I also think bringing it to LTM, bringing it to LMI, bringing it to our sites and ensuring that our teachers and staff are involved in kind of which one of these options seems to resonate. I mean, things like bonds, we're obviously going to have to go out and see what voters will support in addition to what people want, right? But I think it's important that we're not making these decisions in isolation without thinking about the folks that we want, the folks that we want to be impacted by this and making sure that the solutions resonate with their needs.
I just wanted to say that I do think it's important to recognize that first of all, like if we were to do this, it would be educator housing, so it would be open to staff, teachers, like not just teachers but classified staff as well, I also think, I'm remembering our equity network and how one of the presenters posed a question and said, do you consider yourself working class or middle class? And then she just asked a very blatant question. She was like, do you have a credit card? Do you have a mortgage? And so I think that if we were to move forward with this, we would need to focus and ask for feedback from our staff that are facing housing instability. If you own your home already, then this is not something that you would really utilize. So I do think it's important to have that distinction in mind as we explore this. But I'd like to see us poll our staff. Again, something recent. I know that for our whole district as well. Like some of the data that we saw was just from the city of San Mateo. We also have staff that live in Foster City, right? So we want to make sure we include both cities in that. And yeah, potentially, just explore options with both of our cities. I don't really think that staff would want to live above the district office for many reasons. But I mean, it is, but you got to have security cameras and personal and professional. There should be lines. But I do think I'm interested in exploring. So there's tons of options here, but I think that there are some that have, if we are going to explore them, we need to be more strategic and more focused on getting those, meetings or conversations started quickly, because certain things are moving faster than others. For example, you mentioned, the city of San Mateo and one of their developments that they're going to be working. I think you're referring to the 100% affordable development that they'll be working on, and doing a land swap. I think that's a good idea. I don't think people really know that we own that park, and it's a park. That is a park. People love that park. I love that park, and so, I don't think we could ever really see ourselves like Bayside is already a huge school. It's a K through 8. There's a lot happening there. I think that our community wants that to always be a park, and if there's a potential for us to fulfill more of our student and teacher needs by, and by student, I mean like, attracting and retaining teachers, which will then benefit the students, that is something that we should definitely move on quickly, because that is more time sensitive. Potentially exploring developing this space and that is something more down the line. I do know that, there's also the question of the land that we have where the new North Central School is supposed to be. That is something that I have given thought to, and I do think that, we have Knowles, we have other properties, and I think that specific land there would be, that would be like an ideal site to potentially explore partnering with the San Mateo Union High School District, because it's right next to their high school. And I think this is going to be the first time I really say this publicly, but I think that, I believe that North Central deserves a full school, not a smaller school on the corner lot, and so, yeah, that's how I feel about that. I know there's many things that we would have to explore in order for that to be, oh, now I'm getting all hot, sorry. Many things we would need to explore in terms to see whether that's, something that not only our community wants, but that, would be best for our students, for our teachers, for our community. But I do just want to throw that out there. So there's lots of options. I'm just wondering how folks are feeling about
Can I just
all of those. Mhm.
add one more thing? I failed to mention that Home for All is working on a district. They want to do a county-wide survey so that they can actually analyze not just from each district to district, but to have one survey for all the staff, for classified and certificated. So that was discussed this morning, and I think they're going to bring something back next month. And so I think what I would recommend is that we use that, because it's going to be, the data is going to be shared across district lines.
Okay. So thoughts?
I want to hear the options. I think that I'm open to hearing it, and I think that this is a need that we need to get ahead of and lean into, so I would be interested to hearing the options that we have.
Sorry, thank you, Dante, for the report and recognizing that housing is an issue in our area. Seeing those numbers just kind of puts it, makes it more real, I guess. And I look forward to the city of Foster City and the district working together. As far as housing as a whole, I believe when we first joined the board, we discussed housing needs and possible solutions, but I guess never really fully understood the severity or need. So now the issue seems to be at the forefront. That I also want to hear all of the possible solutions and collaborations with school districts and cities.
So just so we make sure Joan has the right direction, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe what we're asking for is to look at to maybe have to collect information and look at all of our options comprehensively, and maybe prioritized by urgency. So opportunities that are coming up quickly and opportunities that we can look towards the future for. Yeah, and maybe just start having conversations with other school districts or cities about these things, and move forward from there.
Questions? Are any of these discussions in the city liaison meetings? Are these brought up there?
So we could not do something like that before discussing it publicly, which is why we didn't need to discuss it publicly before we can do those things. So
that'd be great.
Yes, we now can at our next meetings.
I think
we
that,
cannot negotiate. Just let me say that.
I think that sums up the direction for for Joan. I just wanted to, so we had two presentations in one, and I also just wanted to, direct, thank you for the Foster City for your presentation. This infographic is really fantastic in terms of all the details, and it really explains who Foster City is and the demographics of Foster City. And I will most likely be at one of your meetings, so thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm actually a renter in Foster City now, so I'd love to go to your meeting. Thank you.
We do have one speaker, Randy Painter.
Yes. Randy, sorry about that. We got our little process mixed up.
So, just to this topic, it was exciting to see the news about Jefferson School District and their addressing of the housing issue for their staff. And I mean, it's sexy, right? I mean, you guys have been talking about this for several years, and there have been proposals brought forth lots of years. And all right, so let's everybody do this. I don't think this is something to rush into at the first shiny thing that you see. So I think that, gathering data and doing it in a very deliberate way, maybe making a task force would be or however these things are done, would be a smart, deliberate way to go about it. It can't be just one person. It can't be, private little meetings and groups. I think it's the gentleman who spoke from Foster City. You look at the data that he presented and how the polling was done. That's really great. I mean, these are really meaningful data as far as how long is it taking for your commute, not just would you be interested in teacher housing, right? I mean, these are data that matter. As far as incorporating this, you can say, yeah, this is important, but how does this fit into a strategic vision, a strategic plan? Everything, as I sit here and listen, it's like, well, okay, what are we going to do with the Measure V funds? Well, let's go ask LMI. Feels a little fragmented. Oh, let's spend some money on teacher housing. That feels a little fragmented. It really, to me, begs for an overarching strategy and priorities and what are you doing? And where does this fit into that? And just last few things, I mean, as far as the Knowles site, I would be really careful about a long-term plan of taking classrooms away when eventually the district is going to need them. Other thing, removing green space. That's in terms of Joinville Park. That's an equity issue. I think, at least some of you know what I'm talking about, and that has long-term impacts. I think the answer to this is through partnership, community partnership. That's strategic. That takes planning. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we're moving on to Facilities Master Plan, Professional Architectural Services to update the district's Facilities Master Plan.
There's no slide. There's nothing to, no slide. Is there? I don't think so. We brought forward to you tonight. This is a follow-up to our October workshop. And just so the board knows, the district has a pool of architects. They went through an RFP process, and there's a pool of architects. So we reached out to a couple of architects in that pool, and we brought forward to you a proposal tonight for them to bring forward to the board for your review and approval by June, a facilities master plan. It's be a comprehensive plan. We share with them the information we went through together in the workshop, going through each site and all the outstanding items at each site. And just as a tangent, as you're likely aware, there are meetings happening at each one of our sites right now and soliciting feedback from your community too. So that's going to be choreographed. That information is going to be choreographed with the effort from ADIS Architects to blend those two together to deliver to you by June, ultimately a facilities master plan. And it'll be a really big, a couple binders full of detailed information by site, cost estimates, et cetera, et cetera. So we're bringing forward tonight a proposal to approve the proposal from ADIS Architects, and we're pleased to bring it forward tonight for your approval.
Questions? Can I?
Go ahead.
Did, for the review, did, is it ADIS?
ADIS.
ADIS, thank you, sorry.
Right.
Did ADIS provide any examples of recent facility master plans, just as an example? Of
ADIS did a facilities master plan for the district back in 2010 or 2013. So we have examples of what they've done for us in the past, which were very detailed. Since that point in time, they have more, there's newer technology that they're utilizing.
Yeah.
But I didn't ask them for an explicit copy of one they've done recently, but
Okay.
they did share they do have newer technology that they'll be utilizing.
Okay. So, I, in terms of the scope of work, the calendar that we have set out, the timeline, I believe that the deadline or the timeframe is either June or May of this year.
Right.
And I was wondering whether or not, I remember having the conversation about the facilities master plan and the need that we definitely need to be ready for, there's a new round of funding that's possibly going to be coming up. And then also the option of whether or not we were going to possibly do a bond in November. And I think that the idea was, well, we need to have a facilities master plan done and ready if we were going to make that decision. I was wondering whether or not, I did take a look at ADIS's, sort of just overall work and just see what kind of master plans they have done in the past. I did come across one that looked really nice, was from Newark, Newark Unified. And I thought it was a really well comprehensive plan. And I thought it was really great. They had individual sites and they had everything you want from a facilities master plan broken down with priorities and facilities of what you would want to see. But they had a ton of public outreach efforts there. They had a ton of meetings. And I know from personal experience that those take a lot of time. And I'm wondering whether or not, are we pushing it to make sure that we could have the possibility of having a November bond, or are we, and maybe this is a question to the board, should we actually say, okay, let's, I'm sorry. I'm thinking, I'm feeling that the schedule might be rushed. But I think maybe what we need to do is move forward and then come to that decision when we get there. Sorry.
So we do have the outreach happening at each site
Yes.
and the collection of the information that would then go to ADIS for collection. But I don't know that the board had made a decision on any specific election cycle.
Yeah.
Or a bond. There was discussion about next school year, but I don't know that you had centered on anything.
Ken, could I just, one other tactical level thing, just I would share with you is that when we look at this composite of all this information that is site-specific, there are many items back from 2010 that have yet to be addressed.
Yeah.
So I think there are many things that are known within the community that were known in 2010 that are still resident today within your community. And so as Dr. Rosas is saying, and as we talked about at the board workshop, there are processes happening in parallel. The community discussions are happening. I've been to several of those, and they're very active, and they're so that's the input part. Can I understand what you're saying too? There's two things that are happening. There's the input piece. There's the architectural choreographing of all that information that delivers to you a product. At that point in time, you can determine if you want to proceed. But I'm not sure if that's necessarily addressing your questions. I think I'm interrupting your thought process.
No, it's okay, and I apologize. I feel like I'm totally off tonight. No, I do think that we have, and we've had presentations about the sort of, the absolute need, the lack of facility sort of upgrades that we've had. You know, the Band-Aids that we put on over and over again, and we really need to go ahead and fix them. But we're looking at sort of like a 10-year plan for the future here, right? And if we go back and look at the last 10 years, did any of our facilities plans back then, I mean, did it collectively maybe combine, look at, well, probably the new school in Foster City, but also we rebuilt, College Park and Fiesta Gardens, and I'm just wondering whether or not, I worry that if we are setting the schedule so quickly to be done by June, and I know I've been one pushing for this too, so I'm trying not to be, hypocritical here. I'm wondering if we push the schedule so that we had the option for a November, possible November bond measure. And if we say that we're actually not going to do a bond measure this November, then that frees up additional time to actually do a really, really thorough, comprehensive master plan. And so,
I should.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, and perhaps I should let your colleagues talk.
No,
about it.
Yeah, can we?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Because I'm happy to engage the conversation, but respectfully, if you want to.
Sorry.
I'm not prepared to work on a bond campaign this year. I'll just tell you that.
We have an election, we have an election issue.
So you're going to take the lead on that? Thanks, Ken.
No, I would, but we have a.
It's interesting that you said you feel like the timeline is somewhat rushed potentially, because I was trying to look right now for the PowerPoint. I remember the last time we had this conversation, I thought we were going to have like an updated plan by now. I thought the presentation was that sometime in like February so I don't know. I feel like we're like behind where we said we were going to be. So that feels a little bit frustrating. And then this, I don't know, I'm concerned a little bit about the cost of this. So I guess maybe talk me through a little bit why do we need this specifically? Because what is this? I don't know. To me, the facilities master plan that, and maybe I just don't have enough information, and I'm willing to admit, if that's the case. I don't want to spend $200,000 for like a binder that's going to sit on the shelf that we don't really need to make this decision. So there might be, it sounds like some of the information around like scoping out costs and us being able to be thoughtful about what we would actually need for a bond is like the big takeaway that we need from this. Is that accurate?
So multiple questions, and I'm trying to answer I'm sorry I didn't write them all down, but to put in context for you, because Ken spoke to one of the issues too. If you want to be eligible for matching funds from the state, you need to have a facilities master plan. You actually have a board policy that's entitled Facilities Master Plan, and it speaks to it specifically. So that's kind of in the aggregate.
And that has to be done in this way, like through an outside.
You need an outside professional resource that has the latest and greatest technology, who can leverage what's happening in other districts, and does the cost estimate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When I look at it in the aggregate, it's less than $200,000. You break down for 20+ sites, it's $10,000 a site. For a 10-year visionary plan, I can look at it from that perspective. The initial cost is something you have, I think, for all of us when we think about, and when I walk through hundreds of classrooms a year, and I see the challenges that some of our amazing, colleagues are doing day to day, and what they could do with $180,000. Right. I mean, that's where your mind goes, right? But at the same time, this is a long-term visionary cost that is, we're managing a $150 million bond right now, and this effort is going to be, if we get to a bond, it's going to be in that range. So you look from a percentage perspective, you're spending that money, you need to do it, you need to have it in order to be eligible for funding. And I can share with you too that I put on the district's behalf, I pushed back really hard on the numbers. So there are numbers that districts get for these types of efforts that are much greater than this cost. So if you think of less than $10,000 for a site for a 10-year plan, that's where I had to get to too, because my initial reaction was, wow, I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So does that help answer your question?
It definitely helps. I mean, I don't love it, but I think,
Right.
if this is something that, I mean, we
Right,
know
right.
that our facilities are, and, we have a lot of work to do. And so if this is what I just want to make sure that, I just want to make sure it doesn't become a binder that sits on a shelf, right? Like, I want to make sure that
that was
we're
the other
just
thing, too.
moving things forward
I would
in
tell you
terms
this
of.
too, that in my experience, now I could say a couple decades, because I've been doing it for a while, but over the decades, on numerous occasions, when there are questions within the community, I brought the binder out for the discussion, because it's a touchstone, because it's something that is used as a resource that helps guide the conversation. So it's a tool that's used, and it's something that, because there's always, you talk about software development, you talk about bringing a product to market, right? That there's always a new idea and a new variable. How about this? And then but when you're in the path, that you have the path says, this is where we're going, this was agreed upon at this point in time, and we're moving forward in this direction, and this is our touchstone that we can refer back to, because there will be a latest and greatest thing. There'll be something 8 years from now we never even heard about before.
Yeah.
That could be utilized, right? But this is much of what we heard too at these sessions too. The folks are your community knows, from my experience in listening, because I've just taken notes, I've not been involved in conversations, but just taking notes at everything means. Your community, from my perspective, knows what they want, knows what they need, and knows what they don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And because they are advocating, they know what they need to move the mountain, as Ken said earlier today.
Mm-hmm.
They know what they need, right? So from that perspective, there's the reaction to the cost, but this is something you need, and this is something that's going to help you get funding, and you need this document too also for, if you do decide to go down the path of going for a bond, you're going to need this document too. That's something you can refer to. It says, we've done our due diligence, we've reached out to our community, we've gotten this, it's been compiled, and it's a way that the community, when I've had community members come and said, I want to see that document, here it is, it's right there, right?
I appreciate the explanation. I have a bias against binders, so.
So I hope that helps.
The last thing, and then I know, sorry. Now I'm taking Ken's place and just having a one-on-one conversation with Patrick here. I think it would be helpful to have just kind of a plan laid out in terms of next steps if we were if November was the time, or potentially maybe March or something, right? Just what that would look like in terms of timeline, like when we need to do what, just to make sure that those options are on the table should we want to pursue them.
The law changed, so we can only do the bonds on the larger elections. So it's the even years.
Right.
So that's why everyone's doing March and everyone's doing November. And per the CSBA, I had that.
We would have to wait 2 more years?
We have to wait 2 years.
Oh.
Yes, I did say that. I said that in my report back from CSBA. Is that the law?
It's like a month
Yeah.
We decided we were going. Okay, so can we have that soon?
Yes.
Okay. I think, Shara, you mentioned that you felt like we were behind schedule with some things. I do just want to say, I remember that we had said that we wanted to do like a roadshow of like all of our sites.
They're doing that.
We've, in fact, this week, I think they've all been, I think North Shore was, if not the last one, we're close to being to have them all done.
Okay, but like, for example, like there are sites that we have never been to, like don't we have like a cafeteria or something where we make all our food?
So we have set you up to go see them when you visit Fiesta.
Oh, okay.
Because it is right behind them.
Okay. And then there's also like a storage area? Maintenance, okay. When do we get to see that?
I don't remember your schedule.
Okay, so it's on our schedule for our school visits, like everything.
I'll have to look it up.
Okay, thank you. But then there was like this not a one pager, but it was like a 1, 2, 3 pager that was like a summary maybe of our previous facilities master plan, right? And that's what I think we had. And that's what's being updated now? Is that that's what's happening? Or we already did that?
From the last master plan, there was a grid, a long grid.
Yes.
That you were given. And that was the launch of a preliminary presentation to schools, saying that, and when they go out to do the roadshow, they show them what has been done at their school, because we took that and marked off all the things that were done. And then there's what hasn't been done. And there's an opportunity for folks to say what's new that needs to be done. So we took that as the base to build from.
Okay. And so that is, when are we getting that back? Because that's different from this.
So that information will be, so process-wise, that information will ultimately be distilled into this document. Those discussions that have happened at every single site, that data will be shared with this team. I think it's referred to and called out as a line item in there. And that'll be reviewed in conjunction with their efforts too. And so that effort of the individual site visits in conjunction with the architect's work that they do too will be blended together. And that's a document you'll see a draft of in May, and then we brought forward to you in June for approval. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? No?
No, I have more clarity.
Okay, great.
Sorry, please.
It's
I
good.
I
It's
don't know
good.
whether
It's big, right? It's big.
Yeah,
And
it's clarity.
not a
I
small
will
number.
say that yes, I'm recovering from illness.
Okay.
It seems like always, we're always recovering. The 183,000 or so, is that 183,425. When my first reaction to it actually was that it was actually low in terms of the cost. Because I've worked on some master plans that actually are much higher than that. But then going back and looking at this, if we're really only updating what we previously had, then this makes sense. When you break it down to about $10,000 a site, that does make sense. It truly is just an update. So it's not really going to be a comprehensive new plan for the next 10 years. It's really just an update of what we previously have not done, basically.
You've opened the door to the next 10 years to your entire community. And in fact, it's discussed, it says, think about it. You can dream big, right? So that door's been open at the site. So I just wanted to help you.
If that door has been open, I don't think the $183,000 is going to pay for what.
Well, I mean, but I
plan
think
was.
that we could be up here for an hour.
Yeah,
a lot
sorry.
talking. I know.
Okay, my two comments is that I want to make sure that we have solar is included and have a mention of educator workforce housing as part of facilities, because it does not appear to be in the scope of work or in any of the conversations, and I know we've had conversations about that, and so I just want to make sure that
So we did add in the solar. Now, educator housing, after this conversation, we did not have that in there, but we can add that.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh,
I
we need to vote?
motion to.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Forgot the motion, y'all. Okay, moving on to our certificated seniority list. Sue?
As we do every year, we are presenting for you the updated certificated seniority list. This is a list that we check for accuracy. We verify with each certificated employee to make sure it's accurate, because if there ever was a time that we needed to do layoffs, this would be a very important document. And we don't wait until we have a layoff. We update it every single year. So I respectfully request approval of the list, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have no questions.
Motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the San Mateo Foster City School District Sports Program.
So we would like to bring forward an update about where we are with the after-school athletic program. And we have a number of folks who have stayed with us all evening to be part of this conversation. So we really, really appreciate that you're here. I'm going to give a little history of the after-school program, and then Sue Weiser is going to help with where we are at this time with the program. So at one point in time, the San Mateo Foster City School District supported the after-school athletic program utilizing funding from the general fund. Now, there was a period of time during the recession where the district had been forced to reduce programs and personnel at a very dramatic level. And when staff were being let go, it was determined that we could no longer afford after-school program. And so at that time, there was a very involved group of parents who set up a nonprofit organization to continue the after-school program. And Sport was born. And they held fundraising events and collected donations. And their very first fundraising event was a very large event. It was a golf tournament. And it created a sizable savings account that was able to be managed. And so if donations weren't quite enough one year, that could be used to kick in and fill the gap. So now in 16-17, Sport closed, and the Ed Foundation took over the collection of donations and supported the program. And they continued to support the program with the Run to Fund, and recently they're coming up on their 5K. These are fundraisers that they do earmark the funds for sports. So they collect donations from families, and they do some events. And I do want to at this time say that our PTAs do have line items also, and these line items are often used for example, the uniforms. Uniforms have become very, very expensive. I had no idea 14 jerseys can cost up over $500. So it's very expensive. So all of these folks work together to continue our sports program, and we wanted to give you an update of where we are and some considerations. So I'll turn it over to Sue.
Good evening. So when the sport nonprofit closed down and the Ed Foundation took it over, it was the year 17-18, which is the year that I came. In that year, Colleen Sullivan did a tremendous amount of work to try and support the sports program. And then she and I started to work together. And I want to introduce the people that are here because they are amazing. So one of the things that's happened over time is that our staff has become our site directors, and our staff member, Cheryl Remedios, is our district athletic director, and that's made such a huge difference. So Dennis Clement is the athletic site director for Abbott. Ellie Lawner is the athletic director for Bowditch. Cheryl Remedios is the district athletic director. And then we have Jenna Carson, who's a longtime supporter and parent at Abbott.
And she ran sport for many years.
So as you can see, there's a tremendous amount of support out there for the middle school athletic program. We offer the program at our 4 middle schools. We have 34% of our students, or over 1,200 students, that participate in the program in 18-19. Much of the program is paid for by voluntary donations. Currently, it's $150 per student per sport that parents voluntarily donate, but there's no student that's ever turned away if they cannot pay the donation. There are sport nights for every season at each of the middle schools that our site athletic directors and our district director supports. Parents come, they meet the coaches, they learn about the program. Sometimes we do, for example, we're doing some parent workshops around sportsmanship. And the sports that we offer every season, we have 3 seasons, fall, winter, and spring, and you can see all of the sports that are listed. We have a base program that we want to offer at all of our middle schools so that it's equitable. However, at 2 of our larger schools, like Burrell and Bowditch, we do have larger numbers of teams because they just have more students. So just an update on the budget. So in 18-19, the total cost of the program was $182,000. Excuse me, and we received $160,000 in donations. So we were short about $22,000. The savings account that was there from the previous sport group had been depleted. And so the district and the Ed Foundation contributed to make up the deficit, which is about $22,000 in 18-19. The total budgeted cost for the program in 19-20 is $195,000. And it's probably going to go up a little bit every year because we have increased costs in terms of just payroll costs, benefits, STIRS, all of that. So currently right now it's $195,000.
So at this point, we did want to make sure that you knew how the program had started, where it is now, what the cost is, how we're funding it, and to really realize that there is a running deficit and there is no savings account anymore. So basically, as we move forward, we have three choices. One is either to reduce the after-school athletic program based on the amount of voluntary donations and fundraising, I should have said in this, fundraising that the Education Foundation is doing to ensure the self-sustaining program. We could continue the program at the current level, and we would just know that the district would need to make up a deficit. And you saw that the deficit was about $22,000. The Ed Foundation came up with some, we came up with some. Or maybe look at a third option, which is where we would create some kind of a shared model with the district and Ed Foundation in order to sustain and improve the program. In other words, committing a certain amount of money to this program and then matching it with our donations and Ed Foundation funds. Now, if we had more money that year than we actually ended up needing, it would be an opportunity to update some of these uniforms that have gotten so out of date, or potentially some of the materials that we need for the gyms or for the sports programs. So that would be what we would suggest for the third model. But we need to have some ideas about where you stand with the program, where you might like to move it, so that staff can come back with a plan for you.
I may just add, there's one slide that I skipped. A lot of the costs are around personnel, so obviously the director and site athletic directors do receive a stipend. We have gym supervisors that help supervise students, and we have coaches. We also have referee services, we have field and facility rentals, field preparation, fingerprinting, payroll, and benefits. So that's where all the money is going. In terms of equipment and uniforms, that's largely being supported by PTA. Colleen Sullivan and the Ed Foundation were also really resourceful. They've gotten grants to buy uniforms. She's gotten people to come out and speak and provide training and workshops. But in terms of the $195,000, that's what's included. It does not include balls, equipment, does not include uniforms.
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you. Were you guys going to say something? Oh, do we want to do public comment first? Yeah, let's do public comment.
Okay. So at this time, we have three speakers. We have Cheryl Remedios, Ellie Lawner, and Jenna Curson.
Good evening. So I'm Cheryl Remedios, and I'm the District Athletic Director. And some of the things that I just wanted to emphasize and to let you know about that Sue and Joan didn't touch upon. I really appreciate the Ed Foundation this year for our 6th grade basketball season, which is just in its infancy, starting for the year. The Chance to Excel put up the money to have JT, the mentor coach, come in. He did a coach's training, and he did parent back to information meetings about, that's what our sports nights were for this season. We are losing coaches because of our low pay in the coaches. It has not increased in, I don't know how long, but it's been at $700 for probably close to 10 years. We're losing coaches to officiating because they get paid more to officiate. We're losing coaches to the high school because they also pay a lot more than we do. Our other schools that we compete against all pay their coaches double what we pay at least. We are the least funded coaches. We ask for the least amount of money as well. But we don't turn any kids away. Many of the other people we play against turn kids away. We're losing athletic directors on a yearly basis. This is the longest since I've been in middle school that we've had the same athletic directors at a school who are school staff. We're losing them to, they can go coach at the high school one season and make what they do as an athletic director for the entire school year. So they make $800 a season. So it's, and most of them have PE credentials, so they can go coach at the high school. So the demand for sports is there at all of the schools, because I believe most schools, at least in a season, have to cut some people. So that's all. I just wanted to let you know those things that I think were important for you to know, that's more background information. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Ellie Launer. As mentioned earlier, I'm the Bowditch Athletic Director, as well as a member of the Site Council at Bowditch and a 7th grade English teacher, so I'm the weird one that's not a PE teacher. It's an adventure. So I thought I would share a few statements. I asked some of my 7th and 8th grade students today that are student athletes to just write a few statements about what it's meant to them being a part of the athletic program at Bowditch. So I'll just read a few. School sports are important because they help you find community when you're having a rough time. I have played Bowditch volleyball for 3 years, and it's helped me grow as a person, player, teammate, and friend. After-school sports are a fun way to make friends, learn skills, bond with your team, be competitive, and lastly, grow as a person. Let's see. After-school sports were something I'd always look forward to, and because the competition allowed me, handwritten. After-school sports was something I would always look forward to because the competition allowed for me to improve my leadership and skill. I cannot imagine if other students did not have the option to play after-school sports. After-school sports is one of my favorite parts of Bowditch Middle School. I always encourage all kids to try out, even though they might feel like they won't make a team, but they never know. Even though my team didn't make a championship all 3 years, I loved playing with my friends and had a great season every time. And then lastly, I like playing with other schools because it is a way to learn to be competitive but still have fun. If there weren't any after-school programs, it would be rough because lots of people can't afford to play club sports. So this is their only option to play. And he's a 7th grader. And I know for all 4 kids that I mentioned, it's a significant outlet for all of them. So they wanted me to share that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, all. No long speech tonight. So I'm Jenna Carson, and I have been involved with after-school sports for my tenure in San Mateo, Foster City. The first thing I want to say is I'll just shoot you an email, and if you want to know the backstory and any history and what other districts do, because we researched up and down the peninsula, and what districts do what, and then how do you come up with this sense of like equity and inclusion, right, while still being competitive, and it's still optional, right? There's a lot of balance that goes into that. So I'm always good for history. Ultimately, for me, middle school is the place that you find identity. And it is on us to help our kids have these opportunities. And so plenty of people play after-school sports. We have great community sports in both San Mateo and Foster City. This is kind of the next step for them because nothing makes you feel more connected than wearing that school uniform. So it's very simple for me. It is our job to give this to our middle school kids. The extracurriculars, whether it be drama or art or sport, is going to be the thing that gets them continuing to go to school and get engaged and have an identity that they can then launch into in high school. So any questions, just let me know. We'll see you.
I just wanted to thank you guys for all the work that you guys do and definitely sticking through this long meeting when I think the majority of us are fighting off some sickness or recovering, so we're a little off tonight. But I do think that the athletics is hugely important. It is definitely an outlet, and it's definitely something that, a lot of kids who can't afford to play club sports, this is what they do, and this is where they go. And I know that specifically in our area, club sports are chewing up a lot of our, rec leagues, whether it's Little League or AYSO or, it's becoming big business, as some of the articles came out last year. So I just want to thank you guys for keeping sort of it alive and keep it going. I do have one comment just sort of on the funding piece in terms of not necessarily an ongoing piece, but, we do have 3 brand new gyms that are coming in online this year, or 1, 2, maybe all this year, right? Yeah. If you look up and down any new arena or field that's opened up, like Pac Bell when they opened up, or Levi's, or the new Raiders Stadium in Las Vegas, get that plug out there. They do sell bricks as part of the foundation, and I wonder whether or not it's worth us working with the community foundation to, instead of putting back cement in some sort of entryway or walkway, but actually going out as a foundation and raising money, because there's a lot of people who love, especially when new buildings go in, whether they're alumni from our middle schools or whether they're, generous, corporations that are in our area. But the reality of it is that when you look at the numbers and the decline in sort of that seed fund, my initial thought is, well, how do we build that seed fund back up, or do we need a different kind of funding source? And maybe this is only a one-time thing, but, the thought is a lot of people like to put their name out there. And I don't know whether or not there is sort of a policy of us sort of doing that, and maybe if there is, maybe it's not on school grounds, but I'm just curious how we do that, and if we could, because every stadium that you look at now has something like that. So, it's a question.
I'll say some comments. I'm sorry. Oh, well, I've said it before, and I think it was about music last time I said it, but I think that, to me, not all kids come to school because they like math and they like reading, and sports and music and PE and all these kind of things are important to students. When I was looking at the amount that you charge per sport, per student, I know that that's probably a lot to some, but that's not a lot to a lot of people. And as a mom who I have an incoming 6th grader next year, I'm trying to figure out what to do with him after school. I would pay way more than $150 for for after school program. So I would kind of push maybe seeing if you could charge more. And obviously it's a scale or whatever it is if people can't afford it. But I think that there are people that can definitely afford it and would pay it.
So we did raise the price. It used to be $125.
And do remember, this is a donation only.
Mm-hmm.
You do not charge fees to go do any of these athletic programs. It's a donation from parents.
So it was $125 and it was raised to $150. But, that's something we could potentially look at as well as a donation if people were willing to donate that amount.
Well, especially if other school districts are donating more per student than.
Go ahead. It's all good.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I like all the ideas of how we get money. But I want to thank you guys for your dedication and commitment, despite other make. So thank you. I totally agree that, and kind of what Allison said, like the arts and the music and the sports, that's where it's at to help build and shape the whatever, the little people. They're becoming big people. And so I support investment in that for sure. So, I mean, are we making a motion?
Not yet, hold on. So I love sports. I have always loved sports. And now that I have a 9-year-old, I know how important it is for my kid to get his energy out, or else he can't function, he can't focus, he can't do other things. I've also coached soccer. I was his coach for several years. I'm totally a soccer mom. I love sports. I look at the season schedule. I'm like, my kid would be doing sports all year, all year. And I love the idea of, I think this is an investment that makes sense for kids, and it's sad to hear that we pay so little compared to other districts, and that we haven't invested more in this because, well, I know we haven't always been on the best financial ground, but I mean, we haven't been, I just feel like, if we have money for other things, we have money for this. Absolutely. So to me, the first consideration is not an option. It's not an option. I also think that the second one to me is not an option because I don't think continuing it at the current level is the right thing to do. I know we want to be fiscally responsible, but I think that we owe it to kids to, it's not a huge dollar amount. I think we can find it, we can make sure that kids have a better sports program. And how would it make sense to have these amazing, beautiful gyms and have be taken away from it? That just doesn't make sense, So I like the idea of a shared model, but I also think that there are other ways, and I'd love to hear about other ways that other districts, probably involve the community more and find ways to support their programs, and not just to support our program how it is, but to make it better. So I'm all about that.
Yeah, thank you guys all for being here. I did have a couple questions, and actually, some of your comments addressed them, but I was kind of just curious in thinking about the future considerations. To me seem like we're kind of, stopping, they're more stopgap, and I just had a question around, are there other things that, so yes, there are things that are needed in terms of salary. I'm curious as to, are all students that are wanting to participate able to do so? What are the other needs? What are we talking about here in terms of priorities? And what, the numbers we're looking at are to fund, kind of to Noelia's point, what we currently have, but what else do we need? So I think before that would be helpful. I'm also interested to know how much we're getting from our PTAs. Is that me? Hello. I'm also curious as to what we're getting from our PTAs currently specific to sports. Just, I guess it'd be interesting to have a site-by-site breakdown, but also just kind of generally, because I am interested into, actually, yes, definitely site-by-site, because I'm interested into how that plays into potential equity issues across our sites, if this isn't kind of embedded into some sort of system and structure. Yeah, I agree with Noelia that kind of these first two don't seem like options to me either. I'm interested in terms of in the immediate sense, thinking about a shared model with the district and Ed Foundation as, they're currently supporting the work. I know they're kind of thinking through their model and what they're going to fund and what people need and all of that. There's the Ed Foundation Gala as something else that will hopefully alleviate some of the things that are currently being funded by the Ed Foundation. So potentially there's, we'll see how that goes. This is a shameless plug for everyone to get involved with the gala and to come and give all of your money. There was something else I was going to say. So yeah, I guess as we move forward with this, I would like to know kind of the answers to those questions. And then when we kind of know what we're talking about in terms of numbers, like, this is going to keep us where we are, this is going to kind of help with the next set of priorities, this is like what we really hope in an ideal world, and this is what that's going to cost. Oh, I know what it was. I'm interested too in just, I know the Ed Foundation has explored partnerships, and I know that they get grants, and I'd be interested to know if there are organizations that would be interested in funding this on a long-term basis, right? Like, we're going to commit to funding X for the next 5 years because the more that, again, through kind of some of the Measure V work that we did and now the Gala work, like, I feel like there's a lot of folks in the community that are ripe for it, and they honestly don't know who to go to in a district to figure out where to spend their money and how to spend it. And so the more that we can really be proactive about that, so I'd be interested in kind of exploring some of those options. I also know that some of our local elected officials have pots of money to tap into for things like this. So I know some of the supervisors have, and it's not like it's going to be $100,000, but $10,000 here, $15,000 there, and it might be a one-time thing. But I know a couple folks that have put that out already, and, I'm happy to help with any of those sorts of things too. But yeah, I feel like, as is everything, almost all of the discussions we've had tonight, it's like, okay, we have a lot of questions and need more information, so let's bring it back. And
the reason, of course, bringing this to you is that I wasn't sure as to how much you knew about the origination of all of this, that it was a program that was funded entirely by the district, that was lost at a certain point in time. It was picked up by sport and then by the Ed Foundation. And I did not know whether you were clear about the fact that it is now running a deficit. There is no more savings account. And so the reason that you don't have a fully laid out plan is that we really did need to hear whether you wanted us to simply reduce to the donation level and whatever could be raised, stop the gap, go ahead and pay the gap, or whether you wanted more of a comprehensive plan of what we might do in the future as we grow this, and really what will that look like, how much would that cost. So we have people who are sitting right here who are willing and able to start creating that plan if that's the direction of the district, but we weren't going to put all that put all that work to it if that wasn't going to be the interest. So if it's sounding as if you're asking staff and our volunteers to go away and really bring back a more comprehensive plan for you to really look at what the costs are. And it does sound like you have some interest in us pursuing other organizations and groups, and that's something we do on a fairly regular basis already, but we can look at these additional suggestions that you brought up tonight. But that gives us the direction we need to bring something back.
Yeah. Can I just say one more thing? I just want to say thank you again, because I know that our sports program is actually one of those programs that does already take equity in mind. Like, it brings kids together from all backgrounds and really unites them, and it's like it's very unique in that way. And I also remember one of our new task force members, I think she's a track coach at Burrell. Yeah. She mentioned that, she has made decisions as simple as, like, what days am I going to do practice so that all kids can come, So I just want to thank you all for being so student focused and making sure that all of our kids have the opportunity to participate. And we love that, and we want to help and encourage the community to help more as well. So thank you so much for being here and staying so late.
Sorry.
But I'm glad you got to hear everything. It's interesting, right? Yeah. Okay. So that doesn't need a vote. You got what you need, right?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. And we are moving on to board member statements and requests for future agenda items.
Can I start?
Sure. Go for it.
Just three things and one question. One, I did not announce, but I did have the pleasure of walking in the Chinese New Year parade this past Saturday, and I want to publicly thank the Friends of Mandarin Scholars and College Park for inviting me out. It was definitely an experience, and it was a lot of fun. And I would encourage all of you guys, if we have additional opportunities, which I think we will, because Friends of Mandarin always does it, to go do it, because it was a lot of fun. Secondly, I want to publicly recognize, which she's not here because she ran away, and I know she did, for a reason. She's not specifically an employee, district employee, but she's an advisor. But Tish Tish Bissell, received the President's Award today from the Chamber of Commerce. The Bay Area, so Tish, I did mention to her, and she did run away. And she said, "You better not mention anything." Of course, I'm gonna mention something publicly. Tish will be honored. She was honored today by the San Mateo Area Chamber Business Awards reception for her long-term commitment and significant contributions to the leadership program over the past 27 years. In addition to serving on the Leadership Advisory Board and Curriculum Committee in various positions over the years, she has chaired the class opening retreat weekend and helped shape evolving leadership curriculum. She has been extensively involved in the larger community with Samaritan House, Home and Hope, the San Mateo Public Library Foundation, and the San Mateo Foster City School District. So I just wanted to publicly recognize her for all of her work. And my last question, just in terms of awards, is while I was at College Park, it is quite glaring, their California Distinguished Award mural that's up on the wall. It's their big painted, the logo. And I noticed, I don't know whether or not we do that for all the schools, or is that something that we pay for? But it was a really great sort of recognition of what a great school that was. I know, of course, Bowditch and Bowditch and Borel received last year. Baywood just went down to Anaheim to receive the award this year. Do we do stuff like that?
So they can choose how they want to display. Some use a flag, some do plaques inside the office. That was just their choice. So it's up to the school.
Do we pay for that, or do we make
that? There is funding for the flags and the
mural.
memorabilia.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. That's all I have.
I don't have a lot. I knew I had one request. Public comment made me think about the fact that I know we had a while ago talked about re-engaging in a strategic planning process. And as we're sitting here talking about lots and lots of different things that we are bringing back, I do think it wise for us to engage in that process and get really clear about what we're going to do. Because I think we're moving in lots of different directions, and I think having a little bit more clarity and vision is a good idea. So thank you for that reminder, and I would like for that to be something that is agendized. That's it.
Noted. Anyone else? Yeah. Totally random just because I'm looking at this, but usually we do a resolution for recognizing certificated and classified staff for the Appreciation Week. I feel like normally we seem to be a little bit late, so I was just wondering if we can make those resolutions before the week starts?
They're scheduled for that.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So one thing that we discussed, I know we're going to be having an equity task force presentation soon. But I just wanted to also say that I would like for us to have like an ongoing equity agenda item. So, yeah, I just wanted to say that, and I think it's something we should be talking about every single meeting. So I'll get more info on how, what the best process is for that, but that is my request to myself. Okay. And moving on to future meeting dates.
lateness of the evening, I'll let you read those dates right there in your book, and that's it.
Okay. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
We need to go back to closed session or no?
No.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, second. Oh, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It was yours?